So there are people who say, yes, you have to indict him because he has, in fact, broken the laws. And there are other people who say this is going to turn him into a martyr. This is his path through redemption.
Sure.
How do you think about it?
Oh, the law should always take into account someone's popularity. I think that's. I mean, what's happened to our country? It's as though you can't even commit financial fraud anymore. You can't inflate the value of your properties when you need a loan and then deflate it with taxes. I mean, the next thing you know, they're going to send you to jail instead of your lawyer and your accountant and your campaign manager and everyone else around you. The idea that someone may face accountability who's that rich and powerful is outrageous, and this country shouldn't stand for it.
But what if it turns out to be his get out of jail free pass? It's his path to, people will see him as a martyr.
Okay.
You're okay with that? He could become president again.
He could become president anyway. Fareed, we either have the rule of law or we have no rule of law. The rule of law does not take into account if that might make you a martyr to somebody.
I'm not sure why, in the self-proclaimed greatest country in the world, the shining city on a hill with our First Amendment and free press, it takes a comedian to offer a desperately needed respite from the endless both sidesism in this country. Which, by the way, is not a dig at all at Jon Stewart, but it's certainly a dig at the news media that is more concerned about balance than any semblance of basic common sense. So for those in the media who buy into this right-wing narrative that accountability will turn Trump into a martyr, first of all, please, have just an ounce of discernment. Be able to distinguish right-wing wish casting from reality. Just because some clown on the right says something doesn't mean that we have to take it as sacrosanct. Sometimes, and I hope you're sitting down for this, Republicans' idiotic comments are allowed to come and go without etching them into stone in the side of a mountain. I know, unheard of. I mean, honestly, what part of no one is above the law is so difficult to understand here? Why is it that some journalists think that our justice system should calculate the electoral impact of their prosecutorial decisions? If Trump is a criminal, which he is, then he should be treated like every other criminal, period. You cannot claim to have equal justice under the law if you expect law enforcement to make decisions based on the political optics of an indictment. That is quite literally the polar opposite of how our justice system is supposed to work. But beyond that, this argument that indicting Trump will help him is just another way that Republicans are using to try and defend him. It is essentially a coping mechanism for them. Anytime Trump faces even an ounce of accountability, they start screaming about how this will finally lead to the red wave they've been waiting for.
If 100 million people are going to vote for him, if they do indict him, you're going to get 120 million people voting for him. Because they're just, you can't take an honest man down.
I think if he's arrested and indicted, it's going to help him. So go for it.
It doesn't change a thing about his integrity and everything else. We all have sinned. We all have some things that we've done.
If he was to get indicted, I think it'll just more people will come in here on Trump's side for it.
How do you think it'll help him?
I think it'll help him. Definitely. Because it's not right. It's just not right.
He's going to have more press time. His face is going to be out there more often and all that. And Trump's a fighter. So he's going to make it through this.
And if they indict President Trump on fake charges to go after him to try to stop the movement that they cannot stop, he is going to win 2024 in a landslide victory. And then we'll put him in the White House and he will finish what he started. We will gut the government of all the traitors that are serving the globalists in America last.
The only problem is this has always been wrong and has been proven over and over again. In fact, this is exactly what Republicans argued during Trump's first impeachment trial.
You know what? This impeachment thing, it's only going to help Trump because it just cedes all the media turf to him.
The Democrats thought that this spectacle was going to help. Well, our legal eagles will be here in moments to break it all down, just how damaging it was for the Democrats today.
So they're really going to help President Trump get reelected with this, aren't they?
No, we're going to take the House back, keep the Senate, and the president's going to win because of this BS.
I agree with you. Senator, thank you.
The president has done amazing things. He's probably the most productive president in the history of this country, despite this tyrannical witch hunt. I mean, he's doing a fantastic job in light of a daily pounding since he's gotten there. I say, President Trump, wear it as a badge of honor. These people are wrong. Pelosi is leading, like I said, a witch hunt. It's ridiculous, and it's going to help the president in the long run.
And so Democrats have no choice but to march forward, despite the fact that it will inevitably destroy them, and they know it will. It's poignant, almost. Congresswoman Debbie Lesko represents the state of Arizona. She's been a sharp critic of all of this impeachment since it began, and she joins us now. Congresswoman, thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me, Tucker. I loved your intro, too.
Well, it was heartfelt, and I mean, you work there, I don't, so you tell me, do you run into Democrats who sincerely think this is going to help them?
I imagine there are Democrats that think this is going to help them, but you're right. I think it's going to really hurt them, and they're going to lose seats, and the Republicans will regain the House of Representatives.
And as we all know, those Republicans were spot on, and Trump rode a massive red wave to re-election while destroying the Democratic Party. I'm just kidding. The Republicans literally delivered one of the worst electoral performances possible, losing the Senate and the White House, and watching Democrats gain seats in the House. And of course, instead of doing any introspection after these entirely wrong predictions, Republicans simply doubled down and made the same predictions when the FBI executed a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago shortly before the 2022 midterm elections, claiming again that any shred of accountability for Trump would equate to massive wins for Republicans. David Brooks, a full-time Republican apologist at the New York Times, wrote an article titled, "Did the FBI just re-elect Trump?" saying that the FBI executing a search warrant in 2022 was going to destroy Democrats' electoral hopes. Quote, "What happens if a prosecutor charges Trump and he is convicted just as he is cruising to the GOP nomination or maybe even the presidency? What happens if the legal system, using its criteria, decides Trump should go to prison at the very moment that the electoral system, using its criteria, decides he should go to the White House? I presume in those circumstances, Trump would be arrested and imprisoned. I would also presume that we would see widespread political violence from incensed Trump supporters who would conclude that the regime has stolen the country. In my view, this is the most likely path to a complete democratic breakdown." In other words, he is literally arguing to not enforce the law because Trump supporters could become violent if they do. Again, this is the polar opposite of how the law is supposed to work. If Trump supporters become violent as a result of the law being enforced against Trump, the solution is to also prosecute those violent Trump supporters, not to bend to their will. Why? Because that quite literally facilitates the violence that these Republicans are pretending is inevitable. The only reason it would be inevitable is because of this mentality. Talk about circular logic. David Brooks refers to this potential for violence as a crisis of legitimacy. But clearly the actual crisis of legitimacy here is that Republicans and commentators like him think that the justice system doesn't actually apply to those who have a cult following, or that for the sake of balance, we need to consider the electoral optics when deciding to prosecute someone. Here's an idea. Maybe don't commit crimes, and then we won't have to twist ourselves into pretzels defending our team. I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it. This is what happens when there is not swift accountability. The more time it takes for prosecutors to make a decision in Trump's multiple ongoing criminal investigations, the more time it gives Trump and his allies to foment violence, sow doubt about the legitimacy of our laws, and find ways to intimidate the judicial system. The New York Times reported last week that Trump has been worried about being indicted since the 1970s, and that is owed to the fact that he's been evading the law for his entire adult life. He's been this way forever, and he always will be. The man is 76 years old. He's not going to have some epiphany and suddenly stop acting like a mob boss, meaning that the onus isn't on him to change, it is on law enforcement to finally hold him accountable. And look, I know that these investigations are serious and complex, and it's important to build as strong a case as possible to make sure that it's bulletproof, but swift action is also important, and we're now seeing the impacts of what happens when justice is delayed. So no, Trump being indicted is not going to produce some red tsunami that he'll leverage to coast back into the White House. And no, prosecutors shouldn't even think about that when making their legal decisions. But they should think about how to protect the rule of law from those who seek to undermine it, and that means that they cannot flinch in the face of this Republican onslaught. The law is the law, whether you have a violent cult following or not. Before you go, a quick announcement. I've started a Spanish YouTube channel. Democrats desperately need to be able to appeal to Spanish-speaking audiences, so this is me doing my part. To help that channel get going in the algorithm so that we can finally start spreading our progressive message and breaking the conservative stranglehold on Spanish-speaking media, please subscribe and watch a few videos. The link to that channel, called Brian Tyler Cohen Espanol, is right here on this screen. And of course, to see more of my content in English, make sure to subscribe to this channel as well. The link is also right here on this screen. Thanks so much for watching.